will continue, or they can listen to the president. The president has been clear on how he feels about that particular demand. As for what happened to the occupier of the office, that one the president has little control over it, because all he needs to do is take a petition and forward it to the chief justice. The chief justice, but the president is of the opinion that, as far as he's concerned, it's premature to be making such requests for the outlawing or the scrapping of the office of special prosecutor. Let's go over the phone lines and speak to lawyer David AMETEPE. Lawyer, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I hope you're well.
Very, very well.
Well, first, a few steps have been taken on this matter, and one of them, of course, is the one that the president has asked, has requested, should be withdrawn. But let's go back to the president's own opinion. He thinks it's premature to be asking for the scrapping of the office of special prosecutor. Does he have a point?
The president,
Yes.
from where he sits, has bigger eyes and a longer vision that he could see more globally and from afar. And if you ask me, the elders say in Akan language, to the effect, when the elder has had his bath, to put it that way, then all water is finished. Just forgive me for my tree type of English. In other words, the statement made by the president should end all matters for the debate on this whole issue of the office of the special prosecutor. If I understand the president, he's simply saying that, look, I've come to inherit state institutions created by law and the constitution. And in this particular case, this institution is a new one, not too old. It may have challenges, and these challenges notwithstanding, there is that general acceptance of all of us that there is corruption, it's endemic, it's not a good thing, and all approaches or institutions that were established to fight corruption are good. And so, establishment of an office of a special prosecutor for the purpose of stemming the tide in the aspect of corruption is a good thing. If there are problems of that office or the personnel, that will be looked at, and it is quite premature to just scrap the office simply because it's not living up to people's expectations. I think that is my understanding of what the president is trying to suggest. And then again, some are of the view that the correspondence of the presidency to parliament, particularly directed to the two members, the majority leader and the chief whip, to withhold their private member bill is a kind of legislative, an executive overreach. In other words, presidency is trying to interfere with the work of parliament. I do not agree entirely. In any case, whether private member bill or government bill, that bills eventually, if passed, will go to the president to assent to become law. True or false?
Yes. That's what will happen.
So what prevents the president from intervening at an early stage to avert something that eventually will come back to him? In any case, the president was elected on the ticket of a political party which has or had a manifesto and policies to implement. During the campaign, all these members of parliament had their posters or pictures with a big one of the president and a small one of the MP candidate. So both the president and the MPs were elected on the same ticket of a political party with a common manifesto or agenda to execute. Again, the position of the majority leader and that of the chief whip are political in nature. The whip is to bring his side of the political divide in parliament to order. In other words, whilst they have their individual and independent, rules to pursue in parliament, they are also mindful of the fact that there is a party agenda that they must execute in parliament. And so parliament cannot, do business without the consideration of the political side of what they do. Whatever they do, there is a political side to it. And I think it is in that regard that the president intervened in this way. The letter was just a request. It was not an order or instruction, so to speak.
But lawyer,
Yes.
the president is the leader of the National Democratic Congress at this time.
Exactly so.
And so that is an instruction, basically, is it not?
Pardon me.
Even though he uses the word request, it's an instruction. Can they say they won't do?
Yes, they can. They can, but they can throw caution to the wind and face the consequences. Because then the members of parliament will be pitching their strength against the president. So there will be a tough war. Okay? It's not an order. They can disregard it, but there will be consequences. Because you see, the majority leader is the leader of the house, and previously that position even carried with it a ministerial kind of portfolio. Because the majority leader is also a minister of parliamentary affairs or the leader of government business. And so you see that there's no absolute separation of powers. Okay? Back in the days, those of you who are old enough and who went through the whole system, there was a particular my favorite question in A-level government. I haven't forgotten that question. It's like this: that the two notions of separation of powers and checks and balances belong to the same phenomenon. Those of you who did A-level government, you may remember this question frequently occurring. And we see it in action. The two notions of separation of powers and checks and balances belong to the same phenomenon. There is never any absolute separation of powers. Each arm will overlap the functions of the other one way or the other without necessarily derailing the other. And that is how society works. So you will notice that this bill could have come as a government-sponsored bill, in which case it would have received a cabinet approval through, let's say, the Attorney General presented this bill, without the need to have that very slippery approach of having a private member bill. Okay? That would have been something coming from the presidency itself, where the president sits in cabinet, and then cabinet gives approval that this bill should be pushed through parliament. So clearly, by its very nature, being a private member bill means that there was no cabinet acceptance of this for it to be a government-sponsored bill. understand it to be.
Mm.
In any case, you see, my understanding further of the president's position is that, look, we are all accepting that the institution is good because it was established for a good purpose to fight corruption. However, I also understand the general feeling that expectations are not being met so far. However, I think that whatever those bottlenecks are, we can look at them and to have and see the institution will live up to people's expectations. So it's too early.
But
That is the understanding.
But has the president, in essence, not also because if you're talking about bottlenecks, you're talking about Mahama Ayariga, Roxanne Nelson Echeda-Pamekpo, two colleagues of yours whose reasoning on issues, constitutional issues, are worth listening to. So, should the president not have given us an opportunity to hear the angle from which they are coming before intervening, so that at least the issues they raise can be addressed to strengthen the office?
Okay. You see, one very famous and celebrated legal jurist in the philosophy of law that we call jurisprudence, known as Roscoe Pound. Okay, is celebrated because of his perspective of what the functions of law are supposed to be. He sees law simply as an instrument of social engineering. In other words, we have competing and conflicting interests and rights. And the role of law is to help to adjust these competing interests and rights. That is all law does. Okay? This OSP law may have certain interests, competing interests. It may be going against some interests. It may be protecting the general interest, but certain individual interests may be at stake. There will be a fight back. The purpose of the law is to consider all this and bring them into harmony. And I think that the president is trying to say that, look, when Parliament considered the bill that eventually became the law establishing the OSP, a lot of these matters were raised. Those concerns about constitutionality were raised. Luckily, Honorable Mahama Ayariga was in Parliament, and my brother Robson, who is my MP, was also in Parliament. They are all not first timers, so I'm sure that they were part of the debate, both at the various committee stages and then eventually the plenary to pass the law. We all know what the difficulties are with that law. And if you ask me, I can tell you that much as the previous Parliament tried so much to engage in what I call a very smart and legal engineering to avoid the effects of Article 88 to create an office which purports to be one that the Attorney General has delegated some of its functions to, only for that office to purport to be independent and even powerful, that it could exist without any direction or intervention of the Attorney General itself, begs the question. Okay, they try so much to go around Article 88, and I have serious reservations. And I tell you that it's not too difficult to point at certain constitutional provisions that those who made that law will have to convince all of us that they have totally overcome the difficulties in the passage of that law, and therefore that office will operate in the way envisioned in the bill. But the president is saying, hello, the office, whichever way it was created, it has been created by an act of parliament. And I've taken an oath as the president to enforce the constitution and the laws made by parliament. This institution is a creature of statute, and it's too early in the day to throw it away with all its purpose. And so let us give ourselves time and see how things unfold. When the problem arises, we identify the problem, we fix the problem, and then we move on. Ultimately, the institution could achieve the purpose for which it has been established. That school of thought also, for me, makes a lot of sense. Those who are talking about the constitutionality of it and all that also, they have a point. But I think we should listen to the president. Eventually, the president is in charge and he must give direction. Okay? The president must give direction as to how things should go. I believe that we should listen to the president.
But beyond that, there's also a matter that has been taken to court on the same issue.
I'm just hearing, and some of us probably contemplated that long ago, but I haven't seen the content of the relief the person is seeking and the nature of constitutional argument that the plaintiff or claimant is making at this stage. But they are all part of the democratic process. Some matters are resolved in court, others in parliament, some administratively and politically. And I think that is how our constitutional, our constitutional system that we have allows all this. And so let's see how things unfold.
Well, so as far as you're concerned, for now, with the president having spoken, the matter of the calls for the scrapping of the office should end for now.
That is my position.
What about the occupier of the office?
What has
Because there are those who say his continuous stay in the office is untenable, especially in the wake of what people see as a clear abuse of power, being a judge in his own matter, exhibiting a trace of conflict of interest in the way he's handled allegations Martin Kpebu has made against him?
That clearly. Those positions taken by persons that you refer to is justified. I was so much appalled when I heard about the arrest of my own classmate, Martin Kpebu. And I made very frantic calls to his phone that night to find out whether it was true. And I made a few interventions. It was needless. It was totally needless. And that kind of show of power and bravado should not be tolerated at any level. It is condemnable and it should continue to be condemned. We need an explanation of that because that is not one of the functions of that office. But that aside, I think we can still separate the issues and deal with them dispassionately. If Kizia Jabin gets things wrong, let's tell him where he gets things wrong. When he goes right, let's applaud
it. But lawyer, somebody who is supposed to help us fight corruption, if your actions are seen to be an abuse and you know that corruption basically is an abuse of power, a position that you've been given, if his actions are found to be trying to be a judge in his own matter, conflict of interest, which also filter on corruption, should we not actually ask for his removal immediately?
Of course, I'm saying that where there are justifiable grounds for calling for his head, nothing should stop anybody from doing so. This particular act, for instance, appalled me, and it is a justifiable call that office should not be used for this kind of personal vendetta or a show of power. I have been a victim of that kind of show of power by the police before, almost 13 or 14 years ago. I was a victim. State institutions, particularly the law enforcement, power easily gets into their heads. And I'm one person that has stood very stoutly against such abuses. We will not tolerate that anywhere. Nowhere should anybody justify the use of such brute force and naked power by those who think they wield power. Never should that happen again. So those who call for his head are justified to do so. I believe by now that office ought to have issued a public apology to all of us and Martin Tebu, one of the leaders of good governance and corruption. I feel so scandalized anytime this matter is repeated. It should never happen anywhere.
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Sana, you welcome. And thank you for the opportunity once again.
Well, that's lawyer David AMETEPE, and he is of the opinion that now that the president has spoken, please let's lay it all to rest on the matter of the scrapping of the office. The president did not say that he cannot call for the head of William Kisi Ejabing, right? It's William, right?
William.
Okay. They cannot call for his head, but the president says the office at least give it time. Small. Nancy,
Yes,
you
sir.
agree
Oh,
that the office needs